Several years ago, mysterious circles of unknown origin began to appear in the fields of England and Finland. These formations, known as black clearings, attracted the attention of both scientists and mystery enthusiasts. They were referred to as dust patterns, and despite attempts to find a scientific explanation, many people perceive them as a written warning from an extraterrestrial intelligence. This phenomenon can be characterized as a message from space. In the late 1980s, the ancient magic of the English fields was revived in new forms. Numerous reports came in about silvery discs hovering over the countryside. The town of Warminster gained a reputation as the English UFO base, as it recorded the highest number of their appearances. Particular interest was sparked by ongoing reports of sightings of a spherical object with a strange golden glow. With the emergence of UFOs, a mystery began, linked to the first rays of the sun, when tangible evidence of extraterrestrial invasion was discovered. The surrounding wheat fields were marked by the hand of an invisible geometer, and the plants were virtually unharmed, lying flat against the ground. A typical pattern of a black clearing can be envisioned as circles, ovals, rings, and radiating rays. These circles, or so-called dust symbols, vividly illustrate a possible connection between UFOs and numerous mysterious signs on the surface of the Earth. However, is there a real connection between black clearings and UFOs? Colin Andrews, the president of the International Association for the Study of Crop Circles, notes that from the very beginning, black clearings were mentioned in connection with reports of aerial phenomena. According to most observations, the appearance of the patterns preceded the glow in the form of rays and dancing orange lights flying directly over the fields, after which, as a rule, mysterious symbols were discovered. Nevertheless, the connection between black clearings and aerial phenomena is not yet proof of the extraterrestrial origin of the geometric patterns. In search of further evidence, one should turn to Stan Gordon, a leading expert on UFO landing sites. He points to several areas discovered in Pennsylvania and around the world. Most often, these are round or oval patches with destroyed vegetation, the surface of which is scorched or charred. Alan Hynek, the father of modern ufology, provides a description of a UFO landing site in Canada, remarkably similar to the black clearings of the English fields. He describes how all 5 objects simultaneously rose into the air, leaving behind a 3-meter circle of flattened grass at each of their locations. However, does this mean that flying saucers are responsible for all such phenomena, or is there a simpler explanation? According to the official version of the British government, black holes occur due to complex atmospheric vortices. This theory, designed to maintain the calm of the general public, does not hold up to scrutiny in terms of vortex theory. Vortices are formed under the influence of thermal induction from daylight on the slopes of mountains, and in southern England, even a small hill is a rarity. Moreover, most black holes appear at night. Can such complex patterns be explained by the whims of nature? Look at how precise the invisible artist is, how smooth the edges are. It would be complete madness to claim that this is the result of atmospheric vortices. Thus, the patterns were created by a controlled mechanical object. There are numerous theories regarding the origin of crop circles. One of the latest explanations is the testing of high-precision space weapons as part of the American SOI program. According to this theory, the British government itself is marking the surrounding fields using satellites and laser technologies. For 2 reasons, many are skeptical about the hypothesis regarding the origin of black holes. Firstly, the appearance of these mysterious formations was recorded as early as 1946. Long before the onset of space exploration. Secondly, it would be much simpler to conduct such tests on military base ranges or other protected areas than on the sides of busy roads. It is hard to believe in such irresponsibility from the developers of high-precision technologies. Nevertheless, there are also alternative explanations. Some claim that the emergence of circles is related to the mating games of hedgehogs and dagobras. Indeed, believing this could lead one to conclude about flying saucers as well. However, such theories ignore the simplest option. Someone simply decided to play a prank. In 1990, 2 Englishmen, Duke and Dave, confessed that the mysterious crop circles in the fields were created by their hands. However, they did not explain how they managed to be in England, America, and Russia in one night, make 15 drawings, and not break a single blade of grass in the process. While some believe in the extraterrestrial origin of black holes, others claim copyright over them. Linda Moulton Howe, a lecturer on UFO issues, recalls that in the autumn of 1990, the world press turned to these two gentlemen for an explanation of the mystery of crop circles. According to them, they had ordinary boards with which they walked in circles and created geometric figures. These guys attracted the attention of the media, which announced the unraveling of the mystery of the crop circles. However, it is hard to imagine that two guys could create 15 drawings in one night and remain unseen. How could they have created masterpieces such as Barbarian Castle in a short summer night when an entire team of artists would not have managed it in a week? George Knepp, a journalist and researcher, notes that crop circles appear all over the world, in the United States, Australia, Canada, Japan, and even in the former Soviet Union. It would be absurd to consider them the result of the hard work of two English revelers. Many experts in black circles are astonished by the millimeter precision of the geometric figures. Duke Bauer and Dave Corelli could certainly have done part of the work, but finding hundreds of accomplices around the world is unlikely. There are subtleties that cast doubt on the earthly origin of the black crop circles. Their complex structure and layout do not resemble simple trampling into the ground. Chemical analysis of the grains also indicates the non-human nature of the crops in the circle. It is no secret that every plant on Earth possesses a certain energy. In the framework of unconventional analysis, starch crystals from grains found in the black circles were studied. The crystalline lattice underwent changes that had not been encountered in practice before. Chemical and biophysical transformations at the molecular level were hardly planned by Duke and Dave from the southwest of England. They do not explain what is happening everywhere, including rice fields in Japan. The precise geometric shapes, intricate weaving of the grasses, and changes in the organic nature of the plants lead to the thought of the involvement of anomalous forces in the creation of the black circles. On the surface of the circles, experts noted an increase in the background of microwave radiation. Although their source may be quite earthly, we are accustomed to microwave ovens and satellite television. Perhaps the peaceful waves carrying, for example, a phone call simply got lost in the fields, which led to the formation of intricate patterns. If this is possible, then UFOs should be considered unrelated to such phenomena. However, there remain photographs and thousands of eyewitnesses who observed unidentified objects in close proximity to the circles or the places where they subsequently appeared. One day, a group of 8 experts hired by the United States government arrived at a wheat field in the locality of Olson Barns, not far from the famous Stonehenge, where a large bald patch had been found. Suddenly, an English military helicopter, laden with instruments, flew overhead. It was getting closer, and the witnesses initially thought it was going to photograph the mysterious circles in the fields. However, when the helicopter was in close proximity, it became clear that its objective was to drive them away. One of the eyewitnesses, who had lived in the area for 48 years, noted, "I have never seen anything like this before." A sudden airwave knocked down a hedge right onto their vehicle. Soon, a second helicopter appeared, and both continued to chase them along the highway, flying alongside the shoulder and trying to push them further away. After stopping, one of the helicopters fell behind and headed towards a shimmering spherical object approximately 50 centimeters in diameter. The witnesses lost sight of the object several times, but soon it came back into view as the helicopter attempted to maneuver around it to observe it from all sides. The second helicopter was likely given a cover order, and the glowing sphere was right in front of them. Then, as if by magic, the sphere disappeared, and the helicopters, having spent a couple more minutes over the scene, flew away. The witness pondered, "If you think carefully about what happened, then most likely we were unexpected guests in a place where they were doing something with the little glowing sphere that the locals had already informed us about." By that time, 2 large drawings had appeared in the fields, and the next day, even larger circles were discovered in the same area. This led to the thought that the government knows something that it is trying to keep people away from. Since the early 90s, the number of helicopter sightings has increased exponentially. Now, not a day goes by without something new appearing in England. At the same time, the size and complexity of the drawings themselves are increasing. If one believes in the involvement of UFOs, then the alien pilots have changed their habits. As in the past, they always sought to remain unnoticed and leave no traces. Now, however, they seem to intentionally leave fingerprints at the crime scene. Witnesses claim that ancient circles are created by aerial phenomena, which may be alien spacecraft. But is this really the case? Everything known about the authors of the mysterious circles is based on eyewitness accounts. One girl reported seeing a spherical object that emerged from a beam of bright white light, which rushed across the twilight sky and settled in a field near the ancient burial mound of Sober Eichel. The next morning, a drawing in the shape of a Celtic cross was found there. Witnesses tend to trust their eyes more than their ears. However, in the case of the crop circles, all testimonies seem plausible. Many who observed this formation of the circles did not see any silver discs or spheres hovering above the ground. They simply felt that the ears of grain were falling over on their own, like dominoes. More than 70 descriptions of such cases have accumulated, collected from around the world. Witnesses often note unusual humming and see the grasses swaying. Then everything happens instantaneously, as if by magic. In less than 15 seconds, the grasses twist and lay down to the ground. Many see glowing objects in the shape of spheres and beams maneuvering over the area. The appearance of a golden sphere and a powerful explosion is often mentioned, the rumble of which coincides in time with the formation of the circles. What is this? An argument for or against the UFO theory? According to many testimonies, unidentified objects, after completing their labor drop, disappear or become invisible. Remaining in the shadows, they continue to throw out puzzles. Perhaps they have their reasons for this. The only evidence that people will believe will be the observation of a specially organized group of experts. The next morning, new drawings were discovered a kilometer away from them. Colin Andrews and his team were luckier. He recalls, "We were well prepared for the operation. We set up radars, night vision cameras, infrared emitters, and even took a few dogs from a nearby farm into the field. We monitored every square meter with our instruments, so no living creature could penetrate there without our knowledge." However, early in the morning, everything was shrouded in fog, and the equipment fell silent. When the fog lifted, a new drawing was found in the center of the field. So what did these drawings actually mean? Perhaps this is a message from humanity to other forms of intelligent life. Over the years, the drawings in the fields have changed, becoming more reminiscent of pictograms. A new term has even emerged, agrogel-pyh, or literally dust writings. If these are artificially created symbols, then they must mean something. Agrogel-pyh could be forms of extraterrestrial communication. What do these mysterious writings or drawings, which have come to us from space, narrate? If agrogel-pyhs are forms of interplanetary language, can we decipher them? Many believe that the meaning of the field drawings is somehow related to the places where they are found. For example, in England, most of the dust drawings are located near Stonehenge and at Silbury Hill, one of the oldest burial mounds in Europe. It has also been noted that the most famous agrogel-pyhs are oriented along their axis towards the Silbury Hill mound. Since it is known that Stonehenge and Silbury Hill are monuments of an ancient culture with astonishing knowledge of astronomy, one might assume that this knowledge was read by ancient peoples through the dust drawings. Believing that UFOs have hovered over England throughout its history can explain another coincidence. In June 1991, golden orbs were observed above a hill that had been called the Golden Charm for hundreds of years. Perhaps someone has been trying to contact us for a long time, but we do not yet have the key to this information. Colin Andrews asserts, "I am convinced that the drawings in the fields are writings. They are just not a logical language, but a message from our subconscious, a reminder that we once originated from one universal race of intelligent beings." He adds that the little ones have been controlling earthly life for thousands of years. If aliens are trying to contact us, it is good that this is being done through symbols of communication rather than weapons. Perhaps negotiations are already taking place at a higher level, but the authorities remain silent about it. Is it not time for us to begin deciphering the cosmic messages from millennia ago? With each passing year, the messages become increasingly complex. Perhaps soon the envoys themselves will appear. Whatever the case may be, they will certainly meet us on the pages of the UFO Diaries program. The United States government conceals crucial information about UFOs. The secret project Blue Book has become a repository of secrets inaccessible to ordinary mortals. Why was this project ultimately shut down? Is it not because the military feared information leaks? Today on the program UFO Diaries, we will try to find out what really lay behind the Project Blue Book. The mystery of UFOs does not give peace to people all over the world. What are these objects? Where did they come from? And most importantly, why? Could it be that the hundreds of flying objects observed by witnesses have a completely trivial origin? Or did they indeed come to us from outer space? If UFOs are indeed alien craft, what does the government of Earth think about this? Who are they in relation to us, enemies or friends? And what about our history? Have we always been governed by Earthlings? Over the past 50 years, the American government has changed its policy regarding UFOs several times. It all began in 1947 when private pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying over the state of Washington. He saw 9 strange objects moving in formation over Mount Rainier. Initially, Arnold thought they were airplanes, but their behavior did not correspond at all to the usual maneuvers of aircraft. After landing in Yakima, Washington, he told reporters that these objects jumped like plates on water. Retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Wendell Stevens noted that Arnold's story quickly made it into the newspapers, which began to use terms like flying saucers. Seven Randall, author of the book The History of UFO Crashes, added that Arnold was a respected businessman and an experienced pilot, so no one doubted his account. In response, the U.S. Air Force issued an official explanation calling the sighting a mirage, some kind of ghost hovering in the atmosphere. Since then, hundreds of people began to report similar phenomena. In September 1947, Lieutenant General Nathan Twining wrote to the commander of the American Air Force recommending that an official investigation be conducted into all these facts. On December 30th of the same year, a new secret project was approved based at Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. People learned that the military had begun a hunt for flying saucers, and they called this project Project Saucer, although its official name was SIGN. This project was conceived as a serious attempt to uncover the truth about UFOs, but soon behind-the-scenes games began, and it seemed that the military was deliberately hiding the truth. The first chase for an alien object led to tragic consequences. On January 7, 1948, Captain Thomas Mantell received orders to pursue a UFO over the area of Woodman Hill, Kentucky. When he reached an altitude of 7.5 kilometers, his airplane and the UFO disappeared from radar screens, although his report about the approach of a huge metallic object was still heard over the radio. These were his last words. Later, at 5 o'clock in the evening, Mantell's body was found among the wreckage of his fighter. What happened? Could it be that Mantell's airplane was destroyed by the UFO? Robert Dean, a researcher and analyst, pointed out that the military sealed and removed every screw from his aircraft. Why? Because the captain was openly reporting what he had seen with his own eyes, until he likely died from a lack of oxygen. The project leader later stated that he had merely seen the planet Venus. The Air Force concocted numerous explanations for Captain Mantell's death, claiming that he was chasing Venus, which was an insult to his memory. It was also said that he had climbed too high and had run out of oxygen. The military often resorts to such explanations when it comes to Mantell. All public statements regarding Project SIGN were issued from above, and that is why the version involving Venus emerged, and later, some other star. The fact that the military attributed everything to Venus indicates that they did not want the truth to leak out. In 1947, the United States was recovering from World War II while simultaneously preparing for a new Cold One. Therefore, the Air Force could not allow anything inexplicable to occur in our skies. However, perhaps the eyewitness accounts simply did not hold up to scrutiny. The people from Project SIGN continued to argue against the absurdity of believing in extraterrestrials. Nevertheless, on the night of June 24, 1948, an event occurred that they could not explain. On this day, a new era in the history of ufology began, and this event changed the entire military policy regarding UFOs. What initially changed the skeptical attitude of the Air Force towards the UFO phenomenon. Around 2 o'clock in the morning on June 24, 1948, pilots of an aircraft at an altitude of 1,500 meters above Mangamore, Alabama, noticed a strange flying object. One of the passengers also witnessed this phenomenon. Everyone claimed that it was neither an airplane nor a weather balloon. When the staff of Project SIGN investigated this case, it turned out that 2 more people had observed this object from the ground. Explaining what had happened as a meteor or a mirage was no longer possible. It was an aircraft that humanity simply could not have built in 1948. However, what specifically changed in the operations of Project Sign after this incident? The problems began when the project participants, believing they possessed all the information accumulated by the United States Air Force, suddenly realized that something was being hidden from them. Not a single fact indicating the extraterrestrial origin of UFOs was ever made public. A directive came from above to permanently cover up this information. As a result, they were left with no choice but to concoct absurd explanations or outright ridicule the witnesses. They even went so far as to accuse their own pilots of being delusional. Richard Hines, the author of the book Project Delta, shares his experience. I have worked with research pilots for many years, and there are reasons for that. They are highly trained and operate under excellent visibility conditions. They have a great view and the ability to pursue an object at any moment. There is another reason. The aircraft is equipped with instruments that detect electromagnetic energy. Moreover, they can always call for help over the radio, including military assistance. So they are not just solitary witnesses, they work with other professionals. Despite this, the question arises, why does the Air Force not take these serious witnesses seriously? Many believe that the government, like everyone else, is hiding the truth about UFOs. This is understandable. People assume that the authorities are developing new technologies that are better left unknown to them. However, Hines holds a different opinion. I think it is not like that. The authorities simply do not want to admit that there are things from which they cannot protect us. Dr. David Jacobs, a researcher of the abduction phenomenon, adds, in 1948, Project Sign produced something like a report on its activities. It is still unknown who wrote this report, but it clearly stated that UFOs have extraterrestrial origins, that we derived our modern rockets from them, and so on. This report was sent to the commander of the United States Air Force, George Weinberg. He looked at it and said it was complete madness. Then he ordered all copies of this document to be destroyed, and that is why we still do not know what was written there. The question remains, if there was nothing classified in the report, why destroy it? At that time, General Weinberg knew all the government's secrets, including those that were mysteries to the people involved in Project Sign. Most likely, the report was not a complete surprise to him. He already knew everything. Therefore, he had no choice but to simply destroy this report. Since then, by the way, the Air Force has adopted a policy of concealment. All world governments, including the United States, are trying to suppress information about UFOs. But why? Why launch an expensive project and then quietly shut it down? Perhaps the people from Project Sign learned something forbidden. After Project Sign displeased the U.S. Air Force for some reason, it was successfully closed. Project Sign was replaced by Project Grudge, in which different, more hard-headed people began to work. Vicki Cooper Ecker, editor of the UFO magazine, notes, the military began to select people who were willing to preach the natural origin of UFOs. So Project Grudge became just another facade. And then another incident occurred. In 1951, radar installations at Fort Monmouth in New Jersey detected a group of UFOs that were flying over the military base at an enormous speed. These objects repeatedly appeared in the airspace of the base and were observed from the ground. At that time, the country was entering the Korean conflict, and the Cold War had already been going on for 5 years. The military perceived any fast-moving object as an enemy missile. However, these missiles were moving at such a speed that they could not be intercepted. Investigating this case, many government scientists concluded from the very beginning that it was a matter of the presence of an extraterrestrial intelligence. In 1952, a whole wave of UFO sightings was recorded. The military found themselves in a difficult position. They had to explain to witnesses that they had merely seen Venus. Sometimes their explanations were so absurd that they caused dissatisfaction among the American people. Even Project Grudge could not explain some strange phenomena in the sky. People were frightened and turned to the government for clarification. Despite the military's efforts, they could not turn the situation into a joke, and reports of UFO sightings continued to come in from all over the country. In 1951, Project Grudge was transformed into Project Blue Book, which was created to collect and study all cases of UFO appearances. The government decided to take the study of this phenomenon seriously, and the Air Force promised to reveal the truth. In the 1950s, the number of UFO witnesses grew, and people began to turn to the government for official explanations. They expected these explanations to come from the US Air Force. However, as many ufologists claimed, the organization created for this purpose had no say. It was dictated to them what could and could not be told to the public. In reality, the Air Force was engaged in concealing information from journalists and new witnesses. They were ordered to find any explanations for the appearance of UFOs that did not correspond to what people had seen. Some claimed it was some sort of MUFO, for example, a flying shoe. Thus, they tried to convince people that they were in control of the situation. Mildred Bissell, a representative of MUFON in the state of Utah, was a serious person with unserious ideas, according to Dr. Alan Hynek. Ruppelt was little different from Hynek, who began in the SIGN project as the chief astronomer and was a staunch opponent of UFOs. In the course of their research, Ruppelt and Hynek became convinced of the clearly extraterrestrial origin of the UFO phenomenon. The events of July 1952 finally dispelled their doubts. That year, an entire fleet of UFOs flew over the Capitol and the White House, which were seen by pilots, radar operators, and simply passers-by. These objects performed unimaginable maneuvers that our planes at that time could not execute. Exactly 1 week later, on the 26th of July, UFOs appeared again over the Capitol. When the scrambled interceptors arrived, they were still in the air. Our pilots chased them a little, but, as always, without success. A newspaper boom began regarding this, and requests flew to the Pentagon. What is happening? Who has invaded us? Where should we run? Meanwhile, the Air Force held a press conference, stating that there had been no attack on the Capitol, and it was just a simple mirage caused by temperature fluctuations. Streams of cold air supposedly distorted radar reception, and they saw tiny objects in the air, and witnesses on the street simply became overly excited. Ultimately, the staff of the Blue Book Project found themselves in a difficult situation that did not justify their efforts. Calls to the Pentagon came in such numbers that the Air Force and the CIA began to worry that this could undermine public trust in the military's ability to protect the country. In response, the CIA organized a secret meeting of scientists in January 1953 known as the Robertson Panel. The participants of the meeting had to sift through vast amounts of information collected under the Blue Book Project, including drawings, films, and video recordings. In 12 hours, they combed through 6 years of data and prepared their report. This report has become the official verdict of the American government regarding UFOs. Initially, the study of the UFO mystery was undertaken by the Air Force Project SIGN, followed by Grudge and Blue Book. A question arises: why did the CIA decide to start its own investigation? Blue Book was always available to the public. However, in essence, no one intended to conduct serious research. It seems that they were more interested in whether UFOs posed a threat in the form of secret Soviet weapons. 5 leading scientists came to strange conclusions, deciding that these objects do not necessarily have extraterrestrial origins. They effectively dismissed all evidence of extraterrestrial origins of UFOs. Although this report is merely a piece of paper, it threatens national security. It was then that a disinformation program was launched, which continues to operate to this day. The goal was to convince people that flying saucers do not exist. The Robertson panel developed a specific task for the Air Force to leave the UFO mystery alone and focus on reducing the number of reports of sightings of flying objects, thereby eliminating the threat to national security. This provoked sharp criticism across the country, and the military found themselves in strained relations with the press. As a result, the Air Force ceased to be interested in Blue Book, and in December 1969, the project was closed. However, ufologists claim that the situation is actually different. The military, the CIA, the FBI, and other government agencies continue to deal with the UFO problem. The Freedom of Information Act does not provide Americans with much, as the National Security Act, enacted during the Cold War, clearly states that any information threatening national security must be kept secret. The Cold War has ended, and the question arises, who are we at war with now? Why does the National Security Act still remain in effect? Why is the truth being concealed? Who are our enemies? It seems that some from Washington, especially those connected with national security, consider the American people their enemy. The military possesses documents confirming that UFOs have repeatedly appeared in our skies. If the government believes that they do not pose a threat, then this raises confusion. If this is the case, then who will answer the most important question? Why? The answer is simple. They know everything. They know that aliens have been operating on Earth for 50 years. The Air Force believes that we cannot handle the whole truth, and therefore they feed us tales. Thus, the Blue Book Project remains a mystery shrouded in secrecy. Perhaps it was merely a facade to divert public attention, or maybe the people involved in the project got too close to uncovering the main mystery of humanity. This mystery may forever remain a blank spot on the pages of UFO diaries. American astronauts remain silent about UFOs, fearing accusations of disclosing military secrets. Photographs from Martian satellites are not always published, and the NASA agency seems to be playing hide-and-seek with extraterrestrials. What is this? Idle fiction or glaring facts? Today, the program UFO Diaries explores the history of space exploration, which began in 1961 when Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth aboard the Vostok 1 rocket. He was followed by American Alan Shepard on the Mercury spacecraft, and the space race began to gain momentum. U.S. President John Kennedy inspired the most ambitious project of the late 60s, the landing of an American crew on the moon. In July 1969, this dream became a reality, and the American Space Agency NASA established itself as the leading global authority in space exploration. These were the very specialists who were soon to reveal the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. It was believed that space was full of unidentified flying objects. The first astronauts often shared their impressions of encounters with them. Journalist ufologist George Knapp recalls Gagarin's words, "I saw them with my own eyes. They are incredibly powerful. I could describe them, but I am forbidden to do so." Gagarin never received permission. Future American astronauts also observed UFOs even before going into space, during test flights in the upper layers of the atmosphere. Vicki Cooper Ecker, editor of the UFO magazine, notes that in the early 60s, during the testing of the X-15 jet aircraft, the pilot's task was to study unidentified flying objects. At that time, UFOs were not a secret as they are today. Gordon Cooper, one of the pioneers of space exploration and navigator of the Mercury and Gemini spacecraft, openly spoke about his encounters with UFOs and even tried to prove their existence. He claimed, "We are soaring at altitudes where no human has been before, and we must establish what beings are flying past us in low Earth orbit." However, despite his bravery, Cooper soon fell silent and did not mention his observations for 20 years. The question of why Cooper fell silent remains open. It is possible that this happened because no one believed his stories, or perhaps he faced pressure from management. Many ufologists believe that NASA ordered Cooper and his colleagues to remain silent. Researcher and analyst Brad Dean asserts, "The NASA agency became openly dismissive of its navigators. As soon as the guys returned from space and stammered about UFOs, NASA simply shut them up, sometimes going as far as direct threats." This paints a picture in which NASA sends pilots to explore the upper layers of the atmosphere and outer space, encountering UFOs, which are initially discussed openly, but then suddenly fall silent. When I was gathering materials on UFOs, NASA's press office provided me with the addresses of American astronauts. I wrote to everyone asking the same question, "Is it true?" But no one replied. No one even called me an idiot. There was absolutely no reaction. People working on space projects are forbidden to discuss this topic, although it is well known that unidentified objects have been repeatedly observed in outer space. The space agency has federal-level authority, up to imprisonment. If someone has made contact with aliens, a psychiatric hospital awaits them. Perhaps NASA really has levers of influence over astronauts who boast that they had a flying saucer on their tail. Despite the fact that by law, NASA's press offices are required to report any space phenomena, including those that confirm the existence of extraterrestrials, the agency fears the word extraterrestrial the most. To mask its true intentions, the project Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence was hastily renamed to High-Resolution Scanning. The agency continues to stubbornly deny the possibility of contact with aliens. Perhaps it is just playing hide-and-seek with them. Otherwise, why keep in secret folders the idle fantasies of astronauts who may have gone a bit wild in orbit? Or on the contrary, to conceal real facts that millions of Earthlings are only beginning to suspect. What is the point of drawing the curtains when it is already pitch dark outside? Dr. Richard Haynes, a ufologist, notes that many are now saying that the authorities are hiding the truth about UFOs. If this is the case, then behind the mask of UFOs, the latest technologies are likely being concealed, which they prefer to keep secret. Myths have always been created at the very Olympus. But if these are indeed aliens, then the authorities have simply backed down in the face of their superiority over us. Does this mean that NASA's silence is the calm before the storm of a cosmic battle? And that on the orbit of Earth, besieged by aliens, the shuttles are already being arranged in battle order? Interestingly, once new information almost led to a conflict between NATO countries and the Warsaw Pact. An incredible fact. The NASA agency, conquering the moon in the name of science, simultaneously accuses ufologists of heresy. It is a different matter when it comes to the development of top-secret weapons. Here, everything is as clear as day. It is known that NASA is a semi-military organization, and it is primarily staffed by military personnel. This means it must have its military secrets. Perhaps NASA simply does not want the facts known to it to become public knowledge? Ufologist Robertine, serving in NATO forces, became privy to this secret. In 1963, he was assigned to the NATO Unified Forces headquarters in Paris, where he learned about a study that had begun in 1961. Relations with the Soviet Union at that time were extremely tense. They were on the brink of military conflict, and one of the reasons for this was the strange silver discs that occasionally flew over Soviet territory and the Warsaw Pact zone. These objects zipped by at tremendous speeds at unreachable altitudes. At one point, Soviet authorities mistook them for NATO probes, while NATO, in turn, thought they were Soviet spies. But it soon became clear that neither side possessed secrets of such technology. The question of the involvement of a third party hung in the air. According to Robert Dean, government scientists concluded that the flying discs had extraterrestrial origins and that the chances of defeating them in combat conditions were extremely low. He believes that today, individual representatives of the authorities know much more about this than all ufologists combined. For 50 years, we have been fed all sorts of tales, and it is no longer funny. The world powers learned about extraterrestrials in the early 60s. This implies that the first cosmonauts were prepped for such encounters in advance. Does this mean that NASA became two-faced even back then? According to ufologists, the victims of the policy of silence were not only the cosmonauts, but also the space satellites. Mysterious drawings discovered on the surface of Mars by the American satellite Viking sparked desperate debates in the scientific community. Many scientists accuse NASA of deliberately concealing facts that prove these masterpieces were created by an extraterrestrial civilization. Professor Stanley McDaniel, the author of the book McDaniel Report, expresses suspicion that NASA is afraid of losing government funding if it allows even a hint of the existence of extraterrestrial artifacts in space to surface again. Martian drawings can hardly be called a whim of nature. However, representatives of NASA stubbornly adhere to this version, completely rejecting any assumptions about the architectural capabilities of aliens. Stanley McDaniel, having carefully studied photographs of the Martian portrait, concluded that NASA is clearly withholding something. NASA scientists, defending their version, have constructed a chain of false evidence that is so flimsy that it does not withstand the scrutiny of serious researchers. The debates surrounding the mysterious photograph, which allegedly captured a human-like low-gravity figure, have reignited with new vigor. NASA officials claim that it was an optical illusion that disappeared upon retaking the shot. For 17 years, NASA spoke of a certain photograph that demonstrated a whimsical play of light and shadow. However, they recently had to admit that such a photograph did not exist. The question of how individuals dedicated to the study of other worlds could conceal such a discovery remains open. The programmable satellite Mars Observer, launched in 1992, was intended to finally dispel all optical and non-optical deceptions. But as it approached Mars, the satellite suddenly experienced a malfunction, and communication with it was lost. Some ufologists believe that the satellite is actually intact, and this is yet another trick by the space agency, which is determined to keep its secrets at any cost. NASA had previously not allowed direct data transmission from satellites. Most often, editors had to work meticulously on the footage. However, even the most vigilant team could not prevent a stunning fragment from making its way into the pages of UFO diaries. This was material transmitted from the shuttle via US cable television. Space shuttles, the workhorses of American astronautics, had been transmitting their operational video reports to Earth for many years. Fragments of these reports, according to ufologists, confirm the existence of extraterrestrials. During one of the shuttle flights, which was broadcast live, the cameras remained on, and many viewers managed to find the record button on their devices. The broadcast was transmitted through the NASA selector on one of the cable television channels in the United States, and likely NASA employees were tearing their hair out in despair as viewers finally saw a UFO. Some specialists monitoring the transmission concluded that our shuttle was under attack by a UFO. However, officials from NASA explained the occurrence as a discharge of wastewater, which instantly turned green in open space. NASA representative Dr. Jack Kasher claims that it is ordinary ice and nothing more. Dr. Kasher, a professor of physics at the University of Nebraska, states, "I based my assumptions on the opinions of NASA experts and tried to prove that these were indeed ice fragments. I checked the angles of movement, speed indicators, nothing related to ice. You see, such things have been studied for a long time and they are now taught in school. They could not be meteoroids or satellites, as they move at linear speeds. Therefore, they were UFOs." He adds that it remains only to clarify the origin of these controlled devices, which were located approximately 15 kilometers from the shuttle. "I will tell you unequivocally, it is extraterrestrial, as no Earthling could withstand such acceleration," he emphasizes. If Dr. Kasher is correct, and the ice fragments from NASA are indeed alien spacecraft, then the sensational recording takes on a completely different meaning. For example, what do the thin white threads extending towards one of the objects signify? This could indicate that the spacecraft came under fire, and the UFO is maneuvering to avoid collision with missiles, and it is succeeding. In the mid-70s, the Strategic Defense Initiative program was developed, supposedly to protect against Soviet nuclear missiles. Perhaps this was merely a cover for the start of a secret war in low Earth orbit. If the version of what happened on the shuttle turns out to be true, then we will have solid evidence of extraterrestrial visitation to Earth, which, by the way, easily evades our state-of-the-art weaponry. Thus, perhaps the key to the cosmic secrets of the NASA agency lies here? Could it be that the Star Wars have already begun, and we know nothing about it? As of today, the situation is as follows. A group of ufologists is making serious accusations against the world-renowned space agency, albeit without sufficient evidence. But what if this evidence does indeed emerge? What if NASA is truly hiding shocking facts about aliens from other worlds? Perhaps this is an attempt to prevent widespread panic. Recent events in Earth's orbit are causing concern. Strange objects have been captured on video by NASA cameras. Upon magnification, one of them turned out to be very similar to a well-known type of UFO, the flying triangle. The footage shows NASA operators closely monitoring several such objects that are circling above our heads, while we continue to consider them harmless. There are numerous such objects, leaving the shuttle cameras literally nowhere to turn. One of the images was taken 10 years ago, and another shortly thereafter. What strange objects flew in front of the shuttle cameras in March 1994? Following the sensational story of the attack on the shuttle, NASA ceased broadcasting its video reports on television. As if they simply ran out of imagination and decided to stop the shows. The question remains open. What is the reason for the concealment of facts regarding the presence of extraterrestrial intelligence in Earth's orbit? It is likely connected to the results of a study commissioned by NASA back in the early 1960s. The Brooklyn Institute was tasked with making predictions about the changes that would occur to humanity after contact with aliens. Scientists came to a disheartening conclusion. Contact with highly developed extraterrestrial civilizations could lead to the destruction of our social institutions. History provides numerous examples of entire cultures declining when confronted with previously unknown social systems. One of the researchers shares her thoughts. I do not have 100% certainty that the authorities are hiding the truth about Bonello, but I am sure that learning about the existence of a more advanced civilization would be difficult for us to cope with. Nevertheless, she notes that we are not alone, and these beings may be more advanced than we are. What is actually known at NASA about what is happening? Perhaps one day we will receive a definitive answer to this question. In the upcoming episodes of the program UFO Diaries, questions will be raised about whether aliens really abduct people, and whether it is true that we are guinea pigs in some intergalactic scientific project. If so, who among us is next in line for abduction? Today on the program UFO Diaries, answers to these questions will be provided, and they will come straight from the source. Among millions of supporters of the theory of extraterrestrial life, only a few believe in alien abductions. If this is indeed the case, then we should take a new look at the significance of our planet in the universe, which for many may turn out to be truly terrifying. Most people laugh at reports of aliens infiltrating our cities, homes, and even bodies, considering them tales from comic books. Nevertheless, such reports continue to come in. The first of them dates back to 1961. Thomas Ballard, an employee of the UFO Research Center, recalls the first widely known abduction case involving Barney and Betty Hill. In September 1961, while returning home from a trip through the mountains of New Hampshire, they noticed a strange glow in the sky that began to follow them. Soon it was right beside them. Betty Hill remembers the events of that night in great detail. Barney took binoculars and got out of the car to see what the object was. He saw a being looking at him through the porthole of the ship. Frightened, they rushed away, but soon the flying object hovered directly above the roof of their car. They heard a sound signal, and immediately the car turned off the main road by itself. The car stopped in front of a line of strange beings blocking the road. The Hills got out and followed these beings into some sort of craft that appeared to be a spaceship. Betty Hill recalls that on board this craft, they underwent medical procedures. They examined our eyes, ears, nose, throat, took hair samples and skin scrapings. Then we were released, she recounts. After that, they heard the strange sound signal again and temporarily lost their memory of what happened between these two signals. On the way home, they remembered seeing a certain object, but everything else was wiped from their memory. Such stories seem incredible. Is there real evidence to support the Hills' account? They reported the incident to the authorities, and the case was assigned to the state astronomer of the United States, Walter Webb. According to him, as well as other specialists who dealt with this case, Mrs. Hill understood little about astronomy, but she had an excellent memory. Robert Dean, a researcher and scientific analyst, notes that aboard the ship, Betty was examined and asked questions. On one wall, she saw something resembling a star map and asked the leader of the beings what it was. He replied that it was their home sector of the galaxy. This map imprinted itself in Betty's memory, and later she sketched what she had seen on the wall of the ship. No one could make sense of this drawing, except for one remarkable woman named Marjorie Fish. After 6 attempts, Marjorie managed to decipher Betty's sketch. She obtained a map that revealed a pair of constellations unknown to science until the end of the 1960s. This was an astonishing discovery. From the map, Betty was able to establish the homeland of the aliens, a star system that we call Zeta Network. If the picture drawn by Betty turned out to be correct, then it is worth believing the rest of her abduction story. But where is the evidence that this map was shown to her by an alien from outer space? Betty and Barney had long since given up on everything. For all these years, few believed them, and even the story with the map did not help. However, everything that happened deeply affected their psyche, and many believe that they are telling the truth. Nevertheless, this story did not go beyond a narrow circle of researchers. The event involving Barney was almost completely forgotten when, in 1973, newspaper pages and television screens were filled with reports of a new abduction. Charlie Hickson and Kevin Parker were ordinary citizens with typical hobbies. On the 11th of October, 1973, they were fishing on the Mississippi River when they suddenly heard a noise and saw a blue light spot that quickly took the shape of a flying saucer. 3 beings resembling robots emerged from the object. Hickson and Parker claimed that they were taken aboard the UFO, where analyses and skin samples were taken from various parts of their bodies, and then they were released. Kevin Randall, the author of the book The UFO Crash History, notes that the abduction of Hickson and Parker was widely covered in the press. This case gained worldwide fame and reminded researchers of the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill a decade earlier. Searches for evidence began, but does this evidence actually exist? Many spoke of homogeneous implants, but were they really there? And what lies behind the discussions of psychological effects on the abducted? Today we are trying to answer all these questions. Many note that abduction stories sound remarkably convincing, yet they are not supported by any scientific facts. However, could there be an exception to this rule? Bud Hopkins, who has spent his life investigating people claiming UFO abductions, says, "Over the last 20 years, I have worked with more than 500 such individuals and have found that most of them were indeed abducted. After an abduction, various traces appear on the victim's body. For example, if someone who has been abducted claims that aliens did something to their thigh, I indeed find a small abrasion or a scar from a cut there." Professor David Jacobs has written several books dedicated to the topic of abductions. He believes that he has a multitude of evidence for the existence of this phenomenon. I have seen scars that appeared on the body within a few hours after an abduction. Despite the fact that physiologically this is impossible, I have observed it. Scars can appear in a variety of places, but what about alien implants? Perhaps they will confirm the reality of abductions. Most abducted individuals have implanted objects. People recall a certain instrument that touched their face. They describe a crunching sound or sensation when this instrument pierced the cartilage above the nose, leaving some sort of small ball there. Similar objects have also been found in the ears. I had my ear pulled away from my skull, and then this instrument was plunged into it. Upon waking in the morning, people find blood on the pillow, as well as blood from the nose or ear. Here is the story of a 9-year-old girl whose entire family was affected. One morning, she woke up with a memory of a strange face looking at her. So, her face was framed by a long, deep cut from below. In the emergency room, she received 18 stitches. The doctor said that the cut was made with a scalpel. It was very deep, but the girl remembered nothing. She did not even wake up from the pain. This happened at night, and all the members of her family experienced something similar. There you have it, evidence. Moreover, at the moment of abduction, people literally disappear from the face of the earth. If they are children, their parents begin to search for them, and husbands and wives also start looking for each other. In general, they truly vanish. Dr. Carla Turner has helped many abductees. She claims that people who have become victims of UFOs cannot recover from the shock and horror they experienced throughout their lives. I never planned to become a ufologist, but these beings literally invaded my home and my family. I simply could not stand by. I am sure that something terrible happened to each abductee. The psychological traumas they suffered have altered their perception of the world. Experience shows that abductees can live for many years without remembering anything about what happened to them. Kathy Davis likely experienced the most horrific encounter with unknown beings. She was pregnant and lost her child. I met Kathy in 1983. She wrote to me about strange tracks on the grass and the unusual events associated with them. "Mr. Hopkins, this is Katie Davis. Help me, I cannot sleep. I do not understand what is happening to me." "Calm down and tell me what happened." "All right, it happened at the ranch." Something strange was going on around. The door to the barn was open, although I distinctly remembered closing it. I peeked inside but saw no one. Then, when I was working in the garden, I noticed a scorched patch on the lawn. It had a perfect round shape, and I could not understand what it was. Grow? Grow? Where are you, silly dog? He was terribly frightened, even crawling under the car. He had never done that before. When I climbed up onto the porch, a light struck from the sky. It blinded me. And then I saw them. They grabbed me and dragged me somewhere. There was this horrible table. They were causing me pain. Oh, it hurt so much, my baby. They took my little one. Katie's story is both horrifying and incredible. There may be another explanation for her sudden loss of pregnancy. We conducted various tests, and all of them showed negative results, so you are not pregnant. But Katie is sure that she was pregnant before the encounter with the aliens. Perhaps she was mistaken, and her abduction was just a vivid dream. I have no doubt that aliens are very interested in the process of human reproduction, and the disappearance of a fetus is not uncommon during abductions. Repeated abductions are also not rare, and it likely happened to me as well. When enough information accumulated, one of the participants decided to discuss this with other members of her family. During a lengthy conversation, her ex-husband, looking at his current wife, said, "It seems this happened when we lost the baby." To which she replied, "But I never had a baby." He insisted, "Come on, you must remember. In 1970, she was on contraceptives, but still became pregnant." A couple of months later, she had a painful miscarriage. She was in a panic and did not let him call a doctor. Despite his words, she remembered something entirely different. The most unpleasant thing about abductions is their repetitiveness. Once it happens, it haunts a person for the rest of their life. If you have ever been abducted by aliens, you are not safe from repeated abductions. That is the worst part. The stories of abductions sound frighteningly credible, but perhaps they are just talented fabrications? She had never seen fabrications that looked so real. Even more credible become the stories confirmed by numerous witnesses. There are many such cases, and the witnesses are people who can be trusted. The most famous abduction cases were observed by hundreds of people. Imagine yourself in their place and try to believe what is happening. Strangely, the other residents of New York saw nothing. This happens. So, did a flying object appear over New York? And what did it do with its beam of light? And in general, who saw it? Let us sort everything out in order. Studying numerous reports of abductions, researchers found that in most cases, people were subjected to hypnotic influence that blocked memories of what had occurred. Nevertheless, people retained independent memories. All of this is already impressive. And the presence of external witnesses makes these stories even more credible. In the case of one woman, as in many others, the victim clearly remembered how, while in a paralyzed state, she saw some being by her bed. When she underwent hypnotic regression, she recalled how some force pulled her through the window and then lifted her somewhere up. "You saw the light? What happened next?" they asked her. "It filled the entire room, and I didn't know what to do. A being appeared." "So what happened next?" They continued to inquire. "It came toward me. It reached out its hands and touched my face. And after that, I remember nothing. I had some kind of veil over my eyes, and my whole body was numb. I only remember that I was hanging in the air. The light was blinding me. And then I found myself in a huge ship. They laid me on a table and began their experiments. They poked me with some metal objects." "What happened next?" they asked her again. "I can't say." The most interesting part began when the researcher started talking to people stuck in a traffic jam who had seen all of this from the outside. They saw a ship hovering over Linda's house. Petrified with fear, they watched a deep beam in which suddenly appeared 4 motionless figures. Like moths, these figures flew out of Linda's window. First the alien, then Linda in her nightgown, and following her were 2 more aliens. All 4 were pulled into the bottom of the ship, after which it soared upward. It is important to note that all the witnesses were in different locations, one near Linda's house, another on the Brooklyn Bridge, the third and fourth in other neighborhoods. Therefore, the researcher had no doubt about the authenticity of this incident. If we accept the abduction as an undeniable truth, a logical question arises: why? One of the witnesses to the incident, an investigator, was a rather influential political figure. Perhaps the aliens wanted to show him what they are capable of. But why would aliens abduct people and then release them, even if their memories are erased? Could it be that the UFO pilots, whoever they may be, are trying to exert pressure on world politics? But how can one know who will be the next victim? Perhaps the abductions are merely part of a more complex plan. There is no doubt, human abductions are part of the experiments conducted by the aliens. But what is the true purpose of their appearance on Earth? Ufologists have gathered hundreds of reports of abductions, and the question arises, do these cases have anything in common, or are they interconnected? The victims of abductions come from all walks of life, from farmers and workers to housewives, military personnel, and even children. Surprisingly, this fact usually goes unnoticed. Abductions have even occurred involving university professors and prominent politicians. An expert in ufology asserts, "I would say we have a clinical case on our hands, meaning the aliens are using human bodies for a specific program, but we do not know what the ultimate goal of this program is." Vicky Cooper-Ecker, the editor of the magazine No, shares her thoughts. "It is nice to hold the thought that humanity is part of that vast community we call the universe, and that our elder brothers are watching over us." However, according to her, it is not evident that the aliens are in a hurry to help humanity in its fight against cancer, military conflicts, and other problems. Instead, they take our flesh and energy. They take samples of our flesh, and we do not know what they do with them. Moreover, they take our emotional energy. They milk us like cows, and it is a one-way street. They give us nothing in return. On the other hand, the aliens do not seem to be trying to conquer humanity or cause harm. Many ufologists believe that the aliens are collecting biomaterial on Earth to save their degenerate race. But Vicky is not one to believe in such theories. Whatever is said, these experiments have a genetic nature based on the observations, she asserts. Many witnesses describe small beings that resemble neither humans nor aliens, but rather something in between. Most of the abducted refer to them as hybrids. I believe that the production of such hybrids is the main goal of the abductions, says the expert. However, no one knows why this is necessary. In her opinion, humanity has not coped with certain problems that concern those who have already overcome these difficulties. Genetic experiments, the degeneration of races, all of this seems like idle speculation, spun around the phenomenon of UFOs, she adds. But for those who have become victims of abduction, this is a horrifying reality that has forever changed their lives. Is humanity truly the subject of an unknown cosmic experiment? What are the goals of the inhabitants of the stars who arrive on Earth? And when will they finally explain their intentions? Perhaps abduction is merely preparation for future interplanetary cooperation. There are currently no answers to these questions, and the phenomenon of abductions remains one of the most chilling mysteries in the Chronicles of UFOs.